Hello, this is Jeffrey Booth for the stories for my Lights YouTube channel. As you may have noticed, I got a haircut, so I look slightly less like I crawled out of a dumpster, which I am assuming will enhance your storytelling experience. And if it doesn't, my apologies in advance. Now, let us begin with our story for the night. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Craig. Craig was a regular boy, probably like you who is listening. He loved to play, he loved his family, he loved computer games, he loved movies, he loved playing outside, he loved being rambunctious. But there was one thing that Craig did not expect to happen in his life. One night, when he was laying in his bed looking at the glowing neon light stars on the ceiling, something happened. A circle opened up in the air in front of him. On the other side of that circle, he could see a purple, swirling, dramatically intense haze. He looked at it, wondering what was going on. He suspected he was either dreaming or had consumed yet another moldy sausage. Either way, he was okay with it. But then, suddenly, he wasn't okay, because out of that portal, which is really what it was, came a green hand. The green skin had strange bumps all over it. It had scars. It had long fingernails that were black and gnarly looking. But in its hand, it held a deck of playing cards wrapped up in a box. It threw the cards at Craig's chest. They thumped off of him with a small thud, and then the hand withdrew. The portal closed with a sound. Craig sat up. He felt the cards. They were real. That's strange. He knew he must be sleeping, so he punched himself in the stomach to wake himself up. It didn't work. All he got was a gut ache. So he decided to pinch himself in the face. All he got was a pinch and a scratch on his face. He didn't wake up. "I'm not asleep," he said. He went and he turned his bedroom light on, and he took the playing cards out and looked at them. These were not like any playing cards that he had ever seen. They were inside of a beautiful wooden case that had a golden clasp locking it shut. He opened the clasp up, and inside he saw a deck of cards. And on this deck of cards were strange images that he didn't understand. One was a sword with a lightning bolt shooting out of it. Another was a rain cloud dumping drops to the ground. Another had a giant monster with two heads. I believe they're called ettins. And so on and so on. These were the weirdest cards he had ever seen. He didn't know or understand what their purpose was, but he knew that he was tired and none of it made sense, and he was actually a little scared. So he actually snuck into his parents' room with his blanket and his pillow and laid on the floor by their bed, because they had a small bed. And in the morning he woke up, went back to his room, saw the playing cards were still there, and let out a little gasp, because honestly he had hoped they would have disappeared by morning. Since they hadn't disappeared, he put them in his backpack and he went off to school. The morning at school was rather normal. He went through his regular classes and saw his friends, had lunch, which happened to be a sausage, but he checked carefully and there was no mold, so he wasn't so worried about hallucinating from the consumption of moldy sausages. At recess, he went under a pine tree in his playground so he could have a little privacy and be left alone, because for some reason he got the feeling he shouldn't be showing other people these cards. They were too strange. They wouldn't believe his story. They might think he was peculiar for having cards with skeletons and swords and rain clouds on them. And furthermore, the clouds looked as if they were made in some very old arcane art style. He would not have been surprised to find out they came from the medieval times. He opened up the box and looked through it again. The cards were still there. He looked at the pictures. He looked at the words more. It was strange. They were weird. But he couldn't explain why he had such an ominous feeling regarding them. He closed them up, went back and finished his day out at school, and then went home. Now this is where Craig's adventure really starts. You see, he walked home from school because he only lived about 500 feet from his house. And as he got up to his front door, he noticed that the front door was ajar. "Mom! Dad!" he yelled as he pushed the door open. There was no response. The strange thing was his dog didn't come running either. He quickly rushed to the back door and looked into his backyard. His dog wasn't there either. He searched the entire house, bedrooms, bathrooms, basement, entertainment rooms. He even checked inside their barrel sauna, which is a sauna that is shaped like a barrel, and they were not inside. He started panicking. He didn't know what to do. He got out his phone and he tried to call his mom. She did not answer. He tried to call his dad. He did not answer. He tried to call his dog, but then of course he remembered his dog does not have a cell phone, and he felt rather foolish for trying that. He walked upstairs into his bedroom and he laid on his bed and tried to think what he should do. He didn't know if he should call the police in case his family was just gone. Perhaps they had gone to a movie during the day that had run long, or they were stuck inside of a traffic jam and their phone batteries were dead. That had to be it. The simplest explanation was the best. After laying in bed for a while, the urge to tinkle came upon him, so he went into the bathroom, used the restroom, and as he was washing his hands, he looked at the mirror where he saw a note. Now, you might expect the note to appear on the mirror of a house to be a regular sticky pad note, perhaps colored, perhaps a regular manila. But no, this was an old, frayed piece of paper with blackened edges. There were fingerprints of red on it. He hoped it was only ketchup, but given the strange events of the past couple days, he didn't know. He grabbed the note and he read it. The handwriting was very sloppy, but he did make it out. If you want your parents back, meet me at midnight at the railroad tracks by the train station. And Craig thought to himself, midnight? My parents, what, have they been kidnapped? Is this a joke? And he knew his parents wouldn't do this to him. He was feeling a little confused and a little lost. So once again, he laid on his bed and he ran through the whole situation in his mind. Now see, they had a very small family. He didn't have a grandfather to call or a grandmother to call. He didn't have anyone to call. So he got on the phone and he called the police. They told him they would be right there. Within 5 minutes, a police SUV pulled up at their house. When the door was open, a female and a male police officer, both of them looking to be about 30 and super fit with giant muscles, came in and they asked him. He told them the whole story, and as he did, he could see their faces growing suspicious. Once he even thought the female police officer was going to laugh at him. Once he was done telling the story, what the police officers told him was this. Well, your parents haven't been gone long enough for us to classify them as missing. Is there someone's house we can take you to? And Craig told them no. And the police officer said, okay, you stay home, you lock the doors, you call us if you need anything. We're gonna go, and if your parents haven't come home in 24 hours, we'll do more. Craig didn't like it. He was a little scared, but he could understand. They couldn't mobilize the whole police force in the event that they were just stuck at the grocery store. So he did as they asked. But right around 11 p.m. he woke up and he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he had to go to the railroad tracks. And he thought, what do I have to lose? So he got a backpack, put some water and food in it, put on his jacket, and started walking. The train station wasn't too far from their house, which was an immense source of annoyance for him because the trains consistently and constantly woke him up each night. He enjoyed the walk under the black starry sky, listening to the crickets chirp as he went. Finally, when he arrived at the train station at the railroad tracks, he walked up to platform 1. Nobody. And platform 2. Nobody was there. Was this some sort of sick joke? He didn't know. Platform 3. Nobody was there. And with a sinking heart, he realized he had made a mistake. But then he went to platform 4. And there he saw a man in a trench coat with a hat on. The man appeared to be sitting and reading an old, tattered book. Craig cleared his throat to let the man know he was coming and walked up to him. Hey, I'm Craig. What's your name? The man looked at him for a moment before saying anything. He had a long face. You might say he looked sad or weary. When he spoke, "Are you the boy?" was all he said. "What boy?" Craig asked. "I don't know what's going on here. My parents are missing and I got this note." And he showed the man the note. The man in the trench coat said, "You are the boy. Come with me." And he walked off. Craig had no choice but to follow because he didn't know what else to do. So he followed the man as the man went to the train station, unlocked the door, took them inside, walked down a long hallway with white tile floors, opened a blue door that creaked, and went inside. Craig would have expected this to be a manager's office or perhaps some sort of break room, but it wasn't. Inside, there was a room with a floor made of brick. And on top of that brick floor, there was a structure which looked like a door frame with no door. But what surprised him was that inside of the store was the same purple energy he had seen in the portal the night before. He was very confused by this. "What is this?" Craig asked. "You must go in." "Why?" "Well, that's where your parents have gone, and the deck has chosen you." Craig took the card deck out of his backpack and showed the man. "Do you mean this?" "Yes," was all the man said. "What is it? I don't understand," Craig said. "You don't, and you won't, until you do it. The only way to learn is to go through life and face the challenges head on. I promise you, when the time comes, you will know what to do." Craig looked at the man and said, "Are you crazy? Last night, when this deck of cards got thrown onto my chest, this green, scabby, shredded hand with black fingernails came through. What if they're in there?" And the man said, "What if?" Craig said, "You're not very helpful. I'm not meant to be. My only job is to get you through the portal. Now go." The man walked out, shut the door behind him. Much to his chagrin, Craig heard the sound of the door locking. He ran over to it, trying to open it, looking for some sort of locking mechanism, but there wasn't one. The lock must be on the outside. Though he was only a child, he was quite strong for his age, so he kicked the door. It wouldn't budge. It didn't even budge a millimeter. He walked all around the room looking for some other form of egress or escape, but he found none. He sat in front of the portal, not knowing what to do. Should he go in? Should he wait? Certainly someone from the train station would come tomorrow and hear him banging on the door and he'd get free. As he sat by the portal, two green arms with disgusting green hands grabbed him and pulled him through. As he went through the portal, he had a strange feeling, almost as if every atom in his body was vibrating and shaking. He had this vague sensation of being caught between two worlds, and then suddenly, with a hiss, he popped out on the other side. It wasn't at all what he expected. He imagined a world with dark purple skies and shimmering haze. He imagined monsters of every sort all over the place. That's not what he found. He found a green field and a blue sky that was so bright it seemed like it was in a cartoon. Beautiful, but not from his world. He looked around. The green hands that had grabbed him were no longer present, but he could see muddy footprints going off into the distance. Now, it might help you to know these footprints were not human footprints. They were three-toed like a bird's, but far too big to have come from a bird. They were either from a creature he didn't know, or something like a pterodactyl or some other ancient giant bird-like creature. He looked around. He had no idea where to go or what to do. So he decided to follow the footprints, and that's what he did. He walked through a grassy field until he got to some woods. These woods had far too many birds in them, and the birds were colors he had never seen on birds before. Bright pink, bright yellow. They were so bright it almost looked as if they were glowing. It was beautiful. The songs they sang were longer and more vibrant than any bird he had ever heard on earth. There were squirrels darting to and fro, but their tails were comically long, and they moved with a speed that perplexed him. After emerging from the woods, he came to a stream, and he thought for sure he would lose the tracks. But on the other side of the stream, he could see the muddy tracks continuing. He walked across the stream, expecting it to be freezing cold, but it was comfortable, like that of a lukewarm bath. He thought. As he emerged from the stream, he noticed something extremely bizarre. His shoes were not wet, though he had just been walking through a stream. He shrugged his shoulders and kept walking. This world didn't make sense, and he still wasn't convinced he was not living in a very, very long dream. As he followed the tracks for another hour, going through fields and woods, and even through a pine forest, and then emerging into another field, he noticed something. The sun had not moved in the sky. It was still exactly at 12 o'clock, the same position that it had been when he came into this world. But finally, in the distance before him, he saw a mountain that was looming tall ahead of him. Now, generally, when we imagine mountains, we imagine row after row of mountainous peaks, snow-capped tips with forested bases. This was nothing like this. This was a giant rock mountain jutting from a flat field, rising into a rocky, sharp apex. It almost looked like a drawing of a mountain or a mountainous toy. But still, the tracks led him this way, so there he walked. As he got closer and closer, he realized the sheer immensity of this mountain. It was bigger than any mountain on Earth. It was bigger than Mount Everest, maybe by double the size. It took him hours, if not longer, to get to the base of it. But finally, as he got to the base, the footprints disappeared, and in front of him was a sheer rock face. He went and tapped on the wall, and much to his surprise, he heard this sound. It sounded hollow. Was this a trap door? He didn't know. He rubbed his hands all over the place, looking for some sort of hinge, or a switch, or a button, or perhaps even a keyhole for a key he did not yet possess. None of these he found. He sat down on the grass, grabbed some water from his backpack, and took a drink. And as he did so, the box of playing cards fell out, the clasp came undone, and a few of the playing cards spilled onto the ground. He noticed one of them had the image of an opening door on it. He did not think this was a coincidence. He took the card and he held it up to the mountain. Nothing happened. He went and pushed it on the cool rock face. Nothing happened. He slid it everywhere he could think in any tiny crevice like a credit card. Nothing happened. And then, in frustration, he threw the card. And as he threw it, it started glowing blue. And it flew like a Chinese star, stuck into the rock, and then went poof, and the card disappeared. But as it did, the rock face began to split apart like two sliding doors opening up. And inside was something he didn't expect. It wasn't a cave, or a passageway, or a hallway. It was a giant chamber. And as he walked into the chamber, he noticed that the inside of the walls were painted blue to look like sky. And hanging at the tippy top from the apex was a sun. Not the real sun, it was much smaller, but it bathed the entire interior of this mountain in a strange light. Then he looked off into the distance and he saw something. There were people. These were the first humans he had seen. They didn't have green skin. There were several of them. He ran as fast as he could to them. When he arrived, as he caught his breath, he recognized there was his mom and dad there. "Mom! Dad!" he shouted to them. They turned around, but their eyes seemed distant, as if their bodies were here, but their minds weren't. They made a noise that was similar to what you might imagine a zombie. "Mom! Dad!" He grabbed them and shook them, but they seemed just to walk around in a stupor. There were other people here too. At first he had thought there were only a few. Now he recognized there were about 8. It was other sets of parents. They weren't his parents. He tried to talk to them, interact with them, shake them. They were also all walking around in the same So he opened his deck of playing cards and looked through all of them. And he found one that had a human head with a circle drawn on top of it and a question mark. The face did look confused. So once again, he took the card out, and this time he threw it at the ground. On the way down, this one began glowing purple. Once again, it stuck into the ground, started growing profusely bright, and then poof, exploded. And as it did so, beautiful purple sparks started falling from the sky. And as they landed on the humans around him, they started waking up. Huh? Where am I? What is this? "Mom, Dad," he said and ran over to his parents. "You're here. Craig, where are we? What's happening?" Craig tried to explain it to them, but they still seemed to be somewhat groggy and didn't quite understand. "This way, come on, everybody." He led them back to the door and out of the mountain. As they got outside, he was disheartened to see there were other creatures out here now too. They were giant golems made of stone, standing 20 feet high. They had glowing red eyes, giant arms thicker than tree trunks, and when they took a step, the ground shook and the thud reverberated through his skull. "I don't like the looks of this," he said. "Neither do we," said the people behind him. Well, the giant golems walked towards them, and he hoped and he prayed to whatever the god of this universe was that they would not hurt him. His prayers were in vain, for they raised back mighty stone fists and smashed down mere feet from where they stood. The ground shook, and a giant boulder-sized indentation now marred the ground. He and all of the others started running. Some of the golems, there were 8 in total, were chasing the parents, and one chased him. He ran as fast as he could until he got to where there was a tree and hid behind it. Quickly, he opened his deck of cards looking for cards. He found one. It showed an explosion and what looked like rock shards radiating from it. He grabbed it, jumped out from behind the tree, and threw it at the stone golem. It pierced into its chest, glowed red, and then exploded. Chunks of rock and debris flew everywhere. One of them actually hit Craig in the head and gave him a slight wound. Nothing serious, but he did notice a little blood. After the debris stopped falling, he walked out from behind the tree and noticed there were still other golems chasing his parents. He found a series of other cards, and one by one he destroyed all of the golems. They rushed him and said, "Thank you, how did you do that?" "I don't know," he said. "Where did you get those cards?" "I don't know, but follow me." And once again they started trekking all the way back, following the footprints that he had followed on the way in. He wondered whose footprints they were, and why these footprints had led him to that mountain. The parents behind him started to wake up and had a greater understanding of the situation. Some of them had mentioned they were laying in their bed when a portal had appeared and something had grabbed them. His parents had no idea how they had gotten there. They were in their car in the garage getting ready to drive away, and they had been pulled away. It was very confusing. Though it surprised Craig, they made it back to the portal without being harassed. There, standing in front of the portal, was the green creature. It stood 8 feet tall, but gangly. This creature was not muscled like the rock golems were. It had disgusting hands with black nails. Its eyes faintly glowed red. Craig opened his card box and grabbed one of the exploding cards and got ready to throw it, when suddenly, "No!" it said. "What?" Craig asked. "Who are you?" "I am the helper. I brought you here to save your family. I gave you the cards, and I bring you this warning. They come, but this time they come to Earth. Take the cards. Prepare your army. You will have to fight them." "Fight who?" Craig said. "You will know. Goodbye. I can't stay any longer." And then he vanished like a mist. This was very strange. Craig and the adults went back through the portal, felt as if they were getting split in two. They emerged into the strange room at this train station. It was daytime and people were walking around. Strangely, there now was a lock on the inside that they opened, and they were able to open the door and leave. Each of the grown-ups went off on their way, and Craig went home with his family. They all talked that night. They didn't understand what had happened or how, but they did agree that he needed to keep the playing cards, and they did agree that they were all very concerned by what the strange creature had told them. That night, they all slept in the same room with their door closed and locked. They were a little scared, but nothing happened. When morning came, they felt better about their lives, but there was still an unease hanging over them about what was to come. That is the end of part 1 of this story, Craig and the Magical Deck. I will tell part 2 next time. For now, I wanted to wish anyone who may be watching this a most excellent night. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my depraved insanity erupt from my mind like a flow of sewage coming from a broken toilet. And Alden, if you are watching this, I want you to know I love you with all my heart, and I hope tonight you have the sweetest dreams.